The key to my son's new $75,000 Cadillac Escalade sat on my kitchen island, right next to the hand-quilted runner I'd made for his wedding. 5 months later, my mail carrier, bless his heart, handed me a thick cream-colored envelope addressed not to me, Sarah Miller, but to the occupant. It was an invitation to the Miller family annual Christmas Eve party. My party, the one I'd hosted in this very house for 41 years. They say betrayal comes like a thief in the night, but mine came in a crisp, linen finish envelope with calligraphy, delivered in broad daylight. Inside, my son Kevin and his new wife Tiffany announced they were carrying on the family tradition at their new home, my home. And there, on Tiffany's Instagram, was the proof, a picture of them standing on my front porch, arm in arm, under the wreath I'd hung just last Thanksgiving. The caption read, "So excited to host our first Christmas in our forever home. #blessed, new beginnings." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a social snub, it was a soft eviction. They weren't just taking over my Christmas party, they were trying to take over my life. And they had no idea that their carefully constructed fantasy was about to come crashing down around them, starting with the Cadillac I'd paid for in cash. Before we continue, please subscribe, tap like, and tell me what city you're watching from in the comments. It all started the day after we buried my husband, Frank. He'd been the love of my life for 45 years, a steady, quiet man who handled all the finances, all the big decisions, while I made our house a home. His passing left a hole in my heart the size of the Grand Canyon. My son, Kevin, was my rock through it all. He held my hand at the funeral, sorted through Frank's old suits for donation, and promised me, "Mom, I'll take care of everything. You won't have to worry about a thing." I believed him. I clung to that promise like a life raft. A month later, Kevin introduced me to Tiffany. She was a whirlwind of yoga pants, perfect teeth, and vanilla-scented perfume. She called me Mama Sarah and gushed about my hydrangeas. She seemed so taken with Kevin, so full of life, and I thought, maybe this is the new beginning we all need. They announced their engagement 2 months after that, a lightning-fast courtship that left me breathless. They wanted a small, intimate wedding, then a big party for all their friends. "We just need a little help getting on our feet, Mom," Kevin had said, sitting at my kitchen table, the one Frank had built with his 2 owned hands. Tiffany nodded, her eyes wide and earnest. "We want to build a life as strong as yours and Dad's was." How could I say no to that? Frank and I had always planned to help Kevin. We had savings, and the house in Asheville was paid off, free and clear for 20 years. It was our fortress, our legacy. I'd helped pick the paint colors, planted every single rose bush lining the walkway, and could still feel the phantom warmth of Frank's hand on my back as we watched thunderstorms roll in over the Blue Ridge Mountains from our porch swing. The conversation started innocently enough. Tiffany was scrolling through car listings on her phone. "She really needs a reliable car for work," she'd sighed, loud enough for me to hear from the sink where I was washing vegetables from my garden. "Something safe, for our future family." Kevin had added, "The old sedan is on its last legs, Mom. It's just not practical." Frank had always believed in giving with a warm hand. I wanted to honor that. So I went to the dealership with them. The salesman saw Tiffany's eyes light up at a polished black Escalade, all chrome and leather. The sticker price made my stomach clench. $75,490. It was more than Frank and I paid for this whole house back in 1982. But Kevin was so happy. He ran his hand over the hood like it was a sacred object. "Mom, this would change everything for us," he whispered. I wrote the check from Frank's life insurance policy. It felt like a piece of him was helping his son, securing his future. As I signed my name, I felt a pang of unease, a little voice that sounded a lot like Frank saying, "Sarah, are you sure about this?" I pushed it down. This was my son. This was for his family. At their wedding reception, a month later, they parked the Escalade right out front with a big red bow on it. Tiffany gave me a hug that smelled of hairspray and ambition and whispered, "You're the best mother-in-law a girl could ask for. We'll make you so proud." The pride lasted about 3 weeks. That's when the second big conversation happened. This one wasn't about cars, it was about the house. They came over for Sunday dinner. I'd made my pot roast, the one Kevin had loved since he was a boy. As I was clearing the plates, Tiffany pulled a sheaf of papers from her designer handbag. "Mama Sarah, we were talking to our financial advisor," she began, her voice smooth as silk. "He said the best way to protect your assets and make things easier down the road is to add Kevin to the deed of the house." Kevin chimed in, right on cue. "It's called avoiding probate, Mom. It just means that if anything happens to you, the house automatically passes to me without any lawyers or courts. It saves a ton of money and hassle. Dad would have wanted it this way, to keep things simple." He looked at me, his eyes full of what I thought was concern. "It doesn't change anything for you. You live here forever, of course. It's just paperwork, a formality."
I was tired. The grief still sat on my chest like a pile of bricks, and legal documents always made my head spin. Frank handled this stuff. "I'll take care of everything," Kevin had promised. This must be what he meant. They made it sound so logical, so caring. They said they had a notary who could come by the next day, a friend of Tiffany's, so I wouldn't even have to go anywhere. "We'll get it all taken care of for you, Mom," he'd said, patting my hand. The next afternoon, a young woman named Brenda arrived. She was dressed in the same expensive yoga wear as Tiffany. They were all smiles and compliments about my quilting. They spread the papers out on the dining room table. There were so many pages, full of dense legal jargon. Kevin pointed to a line at the bottom of one page. "Just sign here, Mom." Tiffany was already pouring us all iced tea. Brenda, the notary, was chatting about her upcoming trip to Florida with Tiffany. My head was fuzzy. It all felt rushed. I picked up the pen. It felt heavy. I remember thinking it was strange that the pen was a different color than the one the notary used for her signature, but I was too distracted to give it a second thought. I signed where Kevin's finger was pointing. Brenda stamped it with a heavy thud, packed up her things, and they were gone in less than 15 minutes, leaving me with a slice of lemon pound cake and a growing knot in my stomach. Stay till the end. I'll show the truth. That was in July. By September, the phone calls started going to voicemail. When I'd text Kevin to ask about coming over, his replies would be short, one-word answers. Busy, later, swamped. Tiffany stopped calling me Mama Sarah. I saw less and less of them. When I called to ask about our usual plans for Thanksgiving, Kevin was evasive. "Oh, Tiv's parents invited us to their place in Charleston this year, Mom. We can't say no. We'll do a makeup dinner, I promise." The promise, of course, was never kept. I spent Thanksgiving alone for the first time in my life. I ate a frozen dinner and watched the Macy's parade, the silence in the house roaring in my ears. I kept telling myself they were just newlyweds, busy building their life. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been put on a shelf, like one of my old porcelain dolls, to be admired from a distance, but never touched. Then came December, and the invitation to my own Christmas party, or rather, their Christmas party. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. They hadn't even bothered to call. They sent a generic invitation to the occupant as if I were a renter they were hoping to displace. I threw it in the trash, my hands shaking. I pulled it back out. I smoothed the thick paper on my counter, tracing the raised gold lettering of my own address. It felt like a declaration of war. That night, my friend Carol from my quilting circle called. "Sarah, honey, are you okay? We missed you at Kevin and Tiffany's party tonight." My heart stopped. Tonight? What party? Carol sounded confused. Their big Christmas party. The one at your house? My cousin Janine is their neighbor. She posted pictures. It looked like a huge blowout. The whole cul-de-sac was lit up. After I hung up, I did something I rarely do. I went on the internet and searched for Tiffany's Instagram. Her profile was public, and there it was. A flood of images, all posted within the last few hours. Tiffany in a glittering red dress holding a champagne flute. Kevin, his arms slung around her, smiling broadly in front of my fireplace. The stockings Frank and I bought on our first anniversary hanging limply behind him. There were dozens of people I didn't know milling around my living room, standing on my good rug, putting drinks down on my end tables without coasters. The final picture was the one that broke me. Kevin, Tiffany, and a group of their friends on my porch, raising their glasses. The caption, "Cheers to new traditions in our new home." That was when the first piece of the real puzzle fell into place. I went to the mailbox the next morning, my heart still aching from the humiliation. It was mostly Christmas cards and junk mail, but one envelope stood out. It was from a company called Apex Lending Partners. I didn't have any loans with a company like that. My car was paid for. My house was paid for. Frank and I burned the mortgage papers in a little ceremony in the fireplace 20 years ago. It was one of our proudest moments. I opened the envelope. My eyes scanned the page. "Dear Mrs. Miller, this is a second notice regarding your delinquent payment for your home equity line of credit, account number 785-23B-901. I stared at the numbers. They looked like a foreign language. Home equity line of credit? Delinquent payment? My mind went blank with confusion. Then I saw the amount listed under total outstanding balance.
My breath caught in my throat. It couldn't be right. I put on my reading glasses, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the paper still. The number was printed in stark black ink. $150,000. For a long moment, I just stood there in my entryway, the grandfather clock in the hall ticking off the seconds of my life dissolving around me. $150,000 loan against my paid-off house? A loan I had never applied for, never seen, never even heard of. But my name was right there at the top of the page. Sarah L. Miller. My address. The knot in my stomach from that July afternoon tightened into a fist of pure ice. The smiling faces of Kevin and Tiffany flashed in my mind. "It's just to protect your assets, Mom. It's just paperwork. We'll get it all taken care of for you." The iced tea, Brenda the notary, the expensive Escalade, the sudden distance, the party in my home without me. It wasn't just a snub. It wasn't just thoughtlessness. It was a plan. I marched into the kitchen, my slippers shuffling on the tile floor, and picked up the phone. My fingers flew over the numbers for the lending company. After 10 minutes on hold, listening to terrible canned music, a bored-sounding woman answered. "Apex Lending, this is Brenda." My blood ran cold again at the name. Surely not the same one. "My name is Sarah Miller," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've received a bill from you for a HELOC I never opened." The woman sighed. "Ma'am, our records show the account was opened on July 14th of this year. We have all the signed and notarized paperwork here." The initial disbursement of $150,000 was transferred to your primary checking account on July 16th. July 14th, the day after the notary visited. I don't understand," I stammered, sinking into a kitchen chair. "I never saw that money." "Ma'am, I can see the transaction logs. The funds were deposited into a checking account ending in 4521 at Asheville First National Bank. On July 17th, 2 wire transfers were made from that account, One for $75,490 to Fletcher Automotive Group. The other, for $74,000, was made to a new investment account. The Escalade. It all clicked into place with the sickening finality of a coffin lid closing. They didn't just coax me into buying them a car. They stole the equity in my home, Frank's and my entire life's work, to pay for it and to fund their new lifestyle. They used my grief and my trust as a weapon against me. They smiled in my face while they pillaged my future. I knew confronting them would be my next step, but a cold, hard anger was starting to replace the shock. I wasn't some frail, confused old woman they could just push aside. I was Frank Miller's wife, and I was the woman who had raised that boy. And if I brought him into this world, I could certainly bring his world crashing down. That afternoon, I drove over to their rented condo, the one they were supposedly living in. The Escalade was parked out front, gleaming under the winter sun. I didn't knock. I used the emergency key Kevin had given me months ago, just in case. The condo was sparsely furnished, full of boxes. It looked like they were in the middle of moving out, or maybe moving in, to my house. I called Kevin's name. He came out of the bedroom, startled. Tiffany was right behind him. Her smile was tight and phony. "Mama Sarah, what a surprise! You should have called." "I tried," I said, holding up the letter from Apex Lending. "I need you to explain this to me, Kevin. A $150,000 loan against my house." Kevin's face went pale, but he recovered quickly. He took the letter from my hand, glanced at it, and let out a little laugh, a sound that held no humor. "Oh, that? Mom, we talked about this, remember? When we did the paperwork for the deed. It's a line of credit, just for emergencies. You co-signed for me. Your memory, it's been a little shaky since Dad passed." He was gaslighting me. He was standing there in front of the woman he married and telling me I was losing my mind. "I never co-signed for any loan, Kevin. I signed one document to add you to the deed, and I certainly didn't agree for you to take out all the money to buy a car and fund an investment account." Tiffany stepped forward, placing a proprietary hand on Kevin's arm. "Sarah," she said, dropping the mama for the first time, "we're upset, we understand. But you're confused. We have the documents with your signature. We've been managing your finances for you, just like Kevin promised. It's all perfectly legal." "Managing my finances?" I asked, my voice rising. "Is that what you call draining my home's equity and not inviting me for Christmas? Is that what you call throwing a party in my house and sending me an invitation for the occupant?" Kevin had the grace to look ashamed for a split second, but Tiffany's eyes were cold and hard as river stones. "We felt it was best to give you your space," she said coolly. "You've been very emotional lately, and we're taking over the house traditions. It's our time now." My time was over. That's what she was saying. I was being phased out of my own life. I looked at my son, the baby I had rocked to sleep, the boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged, the man whose hand I held at his father's funeral, and I saw a stranger who had stolen from me and was now trying to convince me I was crazy. I left without another word. I could hear them start whispering excitedly before I even closed the door. They thought they'd won. They thought I would just retreat, confused and defeated. I went straight from their condo to my bank. I sat down with a branch manager, a kind woman named Maria I'd known for years. I explained the situation, my voice cracking. I asked her to pull up the transactions from my checking account from July. There it was, on the screen.
The deposit from Apex Lending for $150,000. And the very next day, the transfer's out. Maria printed the statements for me. She also pulled up the information on the investment account the second transfer had gone to. It was a joint brokerage account. The names on it were Kevin Miller and Tiffany Miller. Maria, I asked, my heart pounding, can you see who authorized these wire transfers out of my account? She typed for a moment, her brow furrowed. She turned the screen to me. The authorization was electronic. It had been done online. It looks like the transfer was initiated from an IP address that we don't have on file for you, Sarah. It was done from a new device that was registered to your online banking portal on July 15th. Do you own a new MacBook Pro laptop? I shook my head. I owned an old Dell desktop computer I used for emails and recipes, but I remembered the brand new laptop Tiffany had been showing off at their wedding reception. Another expensive toy. Maria's face was grave. Sarah, based on this, it appears someone accessed your account online and made these transfers. Because your son was on your account as a secondary user for emergencies, it makes it complicated. But the size of the transfers and the speed, this is very serious. I can file a report with our internal fraud department, but you need more. You need to talk to a lawyer, and you should probably go to the police. I walked out of the bank, clutching a folder thick with my financial statements. The crisp winter air hit my face, and for the first time since Frank died, the fog of grief began to lift, replaced by the clarifying fire of pure, righteous anger. They had done this systematically. The deed, the loan, the online bank access. They had used my love and my trust as a key to unlock my life and steal it. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot, the Escalade I had paid for, haunting my mind's eye. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about my home, my memories, my dignity. They had underestimated me. They saw a grieving widow. They were about to meet Sarah Miller the fighter. My first stop the next morning wasn't a lawyer's office. It was the Buncombe County Courthouse, a grand old building downtown that suddenly felt like my last bastion of hope. I went straight to the Register of Deeds. My hands were shaking as I filled out the form to request a copy of the most recent deed filed for my property. A clerk, a woman with kind eyes and a graying bob, took my form. She came back a few minutes later with a crisp copy photo. "Here you go, hun," she said softly. I took the pages over to a small wooden table in the corner and put on my reading glasses. The first thing I noticed was the title at the top, in thick, bold letters. Quitclaim Deed. My heart sunk. A quitclaim deed wasn't just adding a name for probate purposes. It was a full transfer of my interest in the property. I had effectively signed my entire home away, lock, stock, and barrel, to Kevin and Tiffany Miller. My signature was there at the bottom, a wobbly, unfamiliar version of itself. And next to it was the notary stamp of Brenda M. Carlson, with her signature scrawled above it. Date of notarization, July 13th, the day before the HELOC was approved. I folded the paper and put it in my purse, a cold, hard piece of evidence. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was grand theft. From there, I drove to the State Notary Public Administrator's office. I wanted to know if Brenda M. Carlson was even a real notary. She was. According to their records, her commission was active. But the rules were very clear. A notary is required to keep a detailed journal of every act they perform. I filed a formal inquiry into the notarization on my deed, citing potential coercion and lack of proper identification and verification. It was a long shot, but it was another official paper trail.
When I got home, I went through the filing cabinet where Frank had kept all our important documents. In a folder marked House, under the original mortgage papers and the satisfaction of loan, I found it. The small packet of papers the notary had left with me. I'd been so upset and distracted that I just filed it away without a second glance. I pulled it out and spread it on the kitchen table next to the quitclaim deed from the courthouse. My breath hitched. They weren't the same. The document I had a copy of was exactly what Kevin had described, in addition of name to deed to avoid probate. It looked official, but it was a complete fake. The font was slightly different, the formatting less professional. They had performed a classic bait and switch. They had me sign the real quitclaim deed while my eyes were looking at their fabricated, innocent-looking document. I remembered the flurry of activity, Tiffany pouring tea, Brenda, the notary, chattering away. It was a choreographed performance designed to distract me while I signed away my entire life. That was the last piece of proof I needed for myself. Now I needed proof for the world. My next step felt like the hardest one I'd ever have to take. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over Kevin's number. I took a deep breath and channeled every ounce of Frank's calm determination. I called him. "Mom," he answered, sounding wary. "Is everything okay?" "I'm fine, honey," I said, forcing my voice to sound tired and a little confused, playing the part they had assigned me. "I'm sorry about the other day. I was just so startled. This has all been a lot for me. I think you were right. My memory isn't what it used to be. I'd like for you and Tiffany to come over for dinner tomorrow night. I want to understand the paperwork better, and maybe we can clear all this up." There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then I could hear the muffled sound of him whispering to Tiffany. He came back on the line, his voice full of false sympathy. "Of course, Mom. We'd be happy to. We want you to feel comfortable. We'll be there around 6. Don't click away. He'll get what's coming." The next day, I didn't cook. I went to the store and bought a very small, very discreet digital audio recorder. I set it on the mantelpiece, tucked behind a photo of me and Frank on our 40th anniversary. I made a simple lasagna, store-bought, not my homemade one, and a salad. I set the table with the everyday dishes, not the good china. This was not a family dinner. This was an ambush. They arrived right at 6, all smiles and bearing a bottle of cheap wine. Tiffany gave me an air kiss that smelled like victory. "It smells delicious in here, Sarah," she cooed, looking around the living room as if she were measuring for new curtains. We ate in strained silence. I pushed the food around my plate, my stomach in knots. When we were finished, I cleared the plates and said, "Let's go into the living room and talk." I took my seat in Frank's old armchair. It gave me strength. They sat together on the sofa, a united front. I started calmly. "Kevin, Tiffany, I need you to walk me through this again. This loan, this deed." I laid my copy of the fake addition of name to document on the coffee table. Kevin picked it up. "See, Mom, this is what we talked about. It just adds me to the deed so we can avoid probate. It's a standard thing." I let him talk. I let him explain how it protected me. Then I pulled the official quitclaim deed from my purse and laid it on the table next to the fake one. "Then what is this?" I asked, my voice steady. "I got this from the county courthouse yesterday. This is a quitclaim deed. This says I gave you the house, outright, for the sum of $1. Kevin's face went white as a sheet. Tiffany snatched the paper, her eyes scanning it frantically. She saw her name, her victory, spelled out in black and white. She looked up at me, and for the first time, the mask fell. Her face was pure, triumphant greed. "You signed it, Sarah," she said, her voice sharp. "It's a legally binding document. The house is ours. You can live here, of course, for now, but we are the owners." "And the loan?" I pressed, looking directly at my son. "The $150,000 you took out in my name? Did I approve that too, Kevin?" "It was a joint line of credit. We needed the capital to get started, for our future." "You mean for the Escalade, and for your little investment account. I have the bank statements.
I have the wire transfer authorizations you made from Tiffany's new laptop pretending to be me. Tiffany laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. You can't prove any of that. You gave Kevin access to your accounts years ago. You're just a confused old woman making things up because you're lonely and jealous. Who are they gonna believe? And that's when I played my final card. I reached for the document folder on the end table beside me. I think they'll believe Brenda Carlson, I said. Tiffany's smirk faltered. What about her? Well, Brenda's notary journal is very interesting. I got a call back from the state investigator this afternoon. They paid her a visit. Seems her journal entry for July 13th shows her notarizing a document for a Sarah Miller. Yes, but it was for a simple will, notarized at her office downtown at 11:30 a.m. Strange, isn't it? Since you and she were both right here in my house at 2 in the afternoon that day. It seems Brenda forgot that my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, has a security camera on her front porch. The time-stamped footage shows your car, Tiffany, and Brenda's car pulling up at 1:58 p.m. and leaving at 2:14 p.m. on July 13th. The state has already suspended her notary commission pending a full fraud investigation. Forging a notary journal is a felony. The color drained from Tiffany's face. Kevin looked like he was going to be sick. They had been so arrogant, so sure of their cleverness, they hadn't considered the little details, the neighbor's camera, the notary's legal duty. Get out, I said, my voice low and shaking with rage. Get out of my house. They scrambled for the door. Tiffany grabbed her purse, shooting me a look of pure hatred. This isn't over, she hissed. Oh, I know, I said to the closing door. It's just beginning. The very next morning, my new lawyer, a firecracker of a woman named Ellen, filed everything. We filed a civil lawsuit to void the fraudulent quitclaim deed and HELOC. We submitted the bank records, the 2 deeds, the information from the notary investigation, and a copy of Mrs. Gable's security footage. I also gave the digital audio file of my conversation with Kevin and Tiffany to the police detective who was now handling my fraud case. Because North Carolina is a one-party consent state, my recording of them in my own home was perfectly legal. In it, Tiffany clearly states the house is ours, and Kevin admits to the purpose of the loan. It was a confession, gift-wrapped. 2 days before Christmas Eve, a detective came to my door. He was holding an evidence bag. Inside it were the keys to a black Cadillac Escalade. "We've impounded the vehicle, Mrs. Miller," he said gently. "It was purchased with stolen funds. We've also arrested Kevin and Tiffany this morning at their condo. They are being charged with fraud, forgery, and financial elder exploitation." I just nodded, a wave of profound sadness and relief washing over me. I thanked the detective and closed the door. The quiet of my house wrapped around me not like a punishment, but like a comfort. The legal battle was messy but swift. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, the forged notary log, the security camera footage, the fraudulent bank transfers, and their own recorded words, Kevin and Tiffany's case collapsed. Tiffany, ever the survivor, turned on Kevin claiming he had manipulated her, but the joint brokerage account in her name sealed her fate. They both took plea deals to avoid a longer sentence. Kevin got 3 years. Tiffany got 18 months. They were ordered to pay full restitution, though I knew I'd likely never see a dime of it. But I got something more valuable back. The judge voided the quitclaim deed, and my house was mine again, free and clear. The bank was forced to write off the fraudulent HELOC as it was based on forged pretenses.
I changed the locks, of course, and I got a new financial advisor, a patient woman who walked me through every single account I owned and set up alerts for any transaction over $500. On Christmas Eve, I hosted my party. Not a big, flashy affair like the one Tiffany had thrown, but a quiet, warm gathering. My quilting circle friends came, bringing covered dishes and laughter. Carol helped me hang ornaments on the tree. Maria from the bank brought her famous fudge. My neighbors, including the Gables with their life-saving security camera, stopped by. We drank eggnog and sang carols around my piano, my house filled with the sounds of genuine love and friendship. It was the best Christmas I'd had in years. Looking back, the betrayal of my own son is a wound that will never fully heal. But from that pain, I found a strength I never knew I possessed. I learned that my kindness is not a weakness, but my trust must be earned, even by family. I share my story not for pity, but as a warning. To all the women out there, my age, who have spent their lives building a home and a legacy, I say this: stay involved in your own affairs. Ask questions. Never sign anything you don't fully understand. And if you feel something is wrong, do not be afraid to stand up and fight. You are not a confused old woman. You are the queen in your own castle, and you have every right to defend it. My home is my sanctuary again, filled not with ghosts of what I've lost, but with the joyful promise of the life I've reclaimed.
Your watch to the end. Click here. You will hear another story from my grandma.